Good morning, everyone. It's July 16th, 2023. Today I'm going to talk about identity theft. Now, I talk through my own experiences, which you'll hear a little bit more down in what I want to talk about today. But one of the big questions I have is when people find ID, where do they put it? Well, I'm going to tell you what happened to me last week and explain why and what I do tell people to do with them. Well, last week I was walking down the sidewalk, right where the motel was. There was a ledge there, and I found one of our health cards ID on the ledge. I picked it up, looked at the picture, realized that I recognized this woman from somewhere, and I thought it might be from the streets because I do recognize people even just in passing. So I looked at the card closely. It was had just been newly issued about 2 months ago and was good till 2026. So I said, that's fine. I can't do it today, but tomorrow I'll go down and hand it into Service Canada. Now, the next day, on my way to Service Canada, I had this question asked to me again. Oh, well, I've been finding all these ID cards. I don't know what to do with them. So I finally just put them in an envelope, stuck them in my mailbox, and put lost on them. So I don't know what happens if you put them in the mailbox. But I do know from past experience, the best way to take these cards is to take them in right to the source of where they come from. Because when I got into Service Canada, no problem. They took the card. They have special forms that they fill out. So if the card is found or stolen, especially found, and it's returned back in, then they can do a special write-up on the card. They can put it back in their files. They have this on file, and they can track anything from here. So it's a good way of tracking it. And also, nobody gets to steal your ID. And especially with my videos, I've spoken many times about how many times people have been getting their ID stolen and off the streets. And the hard part about having to replace all these cards is all these workers have to fill out the forms for them because they can't seem to do it and get these cards. But this way, at least you know that they're not being abused in any way. And if it turns out to be an abused card, chances are the government will catch up with it. If it does disappear, reported stolen or reported from the person themselves or lost. So this is what you should be doing with the cards, whether it's a driver's license, take it back to the license bureau, whatever. So this is what I've done and I've always done, and find this very appropriate, and I was told that this was a very appropriate way of protecting our ID cards in the best way we can. Now, of course, I was issued my ID card, my SIN number, and my birth certificate when I was 16 and started to go out to work. So, of course, my parents always told me the importance of this, of not losing one's ID. And so today, I still have my original birth certificate as well as my original SIN card that was given to me at 16. Mind you, both cards have yellowed over the years and probably aged just like I've been aging over the years too. So it's worked out pretty well. We've been aging together. But I still have my ID intact. But I want to give you a little bit of a thing about a couple of incidents that happened to me with an ID card, and what happens when your ID gets kind of mixed up. Okay, now, as you know, I've told you I worked as a security guard. Well, I was working in a guard post at the time, and the thing about I was when the first female guards came out, they made our uniforms, so I think they were more fashionable than practical, so there was no pockets put into my guard uniform. So I had to put my security guard card, which is another card which has my picture on it, identifies the guard company that I'm working for, blah, blah, blah. And so it was in my coat pocket, along with about $5 in change that I had taken for drinks and whatever I needed during the shift. So this guard post was in where the maintenance men worked. So there was only 3 people that had access to that guard post. That was the other male guard that was with me, plus another female guard, plus the maintenance man. So I left everything in my coat pocket, went out to do my shift, and about half an hour later I realized I'm thirsty. So I'm going to go get some money out of my coat pocket to go get a drink. Well, when I got to my coat pocket, my ID card had been stolen along with all my money. So there was only 3 people, like I said, that had access, and everybody was asked. No, the male guard hadn't seen it. Female guard swore up and down she hadn't seen it. And the maintenance man, well, he's been there for years. He's never touched anything before, so I wasn't really looking at him. But the interesting thing was it was the female guard that we were looking at, because afterwards the male guard and I were talking, and the male guard, he was hired, and he was from Jamaica, and he had been a detective on the Jamaican Police Department, and he just turned around and said, she's lying. She's the one that took it. So we took it at face value. We couldn't say anything. We couldn't prove anything. But of course, I had to report my ID stolen, which I did to the police about half an hour later, as soon as I realized it had been gone. So that was done properly. And then about 2 years later, what happens? I run into this woman again. And of course, before I met her again, the other thing that was going on back then, there was something wrong with her, because we were hearing rumors that she'd been shifted off different posts because there was problems with her. So in the 2 years when I met up with her again, here she was high. I don't think she recognized who I was, but it was really very interesting, because she started bragging about how she stole people's ID and used it for her own purposes. Now, my ID, I can kind of understand in a sense, and this is what made the other guards, the male guards, suspicious, was because she was the same height as me, she had the same length of hair, it was the same color, our complexions, we both had glasses at the time, and we could have passed off as sisters even. So it would have been very practical at that time. So that was one of the things that I wanted to explain to you, just how important it is to hang on to the cards, to your cards, as well as I want to, and why it's so important that you hang on to these cards, because I want to go on to also state that when this female guard had stolen my ID, this was after my first divorce from my husband, the police officer, and I was using his last name. So that ID card was stolen under his name, and my name kept cropping up, and literally all over the place. And the funny part about it was, because my last name on that card was a very rare name, and it had come about from the War of 1812. I learned from my father-in-law at the time, because what had happened was, during the War of 1812, some of our American relatives, under a totally different name, other than the first 2 letters were correct, came up to fight on our side in the War of 1812, and some British officer, I guess, couldn't spell a name. So when we went to go get we thought we were British, so we went to get our ID and thought we'd get our family crest, and it turned out we couldn't get our family crest because of the name misspelling. And yet, again, what happens is, at that time, of course, the government was handing out land to people who fought on our side, so there's a town actually named in Ontario with the misspelling of that name. So this is one reason. Another reason why it's so important, as well as my first husband. What did he do? One thing about abusive husbands that I found out about with the 2 of my husbands is that they always tell a woman, oh, if you're not happy, you can be easily replaced. Well, in the case of my first husband, I had a little problem, because I had people coming up and asking me why I remarried my first husband when I was still divorced with when I hadn't even divorced my second husband. And I'm going, what are you talking about? Turned out I had to go back to my father-in-law, my first father-in-law again, to find out that what he had done was he married another girl with my first name. So this is why I had people coming out of the tree with my name and my last name that was a rare name, and it was showing up in the phone book all over the place. And I can't help if that's thinking that maybe that security ID was used as well. And again, I have another example of that, and that's my second husband. After we divorced, I understood that he checked out several girls with my first name, or very close to my first name, and so close that we could have been the same name, and we got a little bit confused, because he also went out and married a girl with my first name and his last name, which I'm still using. So that's caused a bit of confusion as well. And of course, they had blended marriages with children from both, and my kids do not get along with her kids at all. So it doesn't necessarily work out what they think is going to happen. And of course, I also knew this woman on top of it, which even added insult to whatever you want to call it, because it was. And I think she was just coming in for the leftovers, to be perfectly honest, of whatever the marriage, what we had in our marriage. But it's the idea of what to do with all these ID cards. But I'm thankful at least the government keeps better records of things than they did in 1812. So again, I don't want to make the video too long, but I just wanted to express some things that have happened to me and how important your ID really is to you, and you should be hanging on to it. And the same thing when you go and apply for cards. If something gets misspelled, sometimes it ends up being your last name, and that's not your last name. So that does not help at all. So please, hang on to your cards, and everyone have a nice day, and you take care, and make sure you do the proper thing with the cards and hand them in to where they belong. And thank you, and take care, and have a good day, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye. Take care.